I know.
It does. Usually it doesn't look that dark, but it is.
It is.
I try to refrain from telling you sometimes.
We're live now. Do you care?
I know, but I try to refrain from telling you sometimes because I don't want you to get upset and then be like, just turn the light on. I don't want to live in this cave anymore, but it'll be all right. Welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. The light is now shining on Mark Messina. There it is. That's good.
But see, my screen adjusts.
Yeah, it's like the contrast adjusts on you. It looks better now, though. It really does.
Does it?
I don't know. I mean, I have just as much light as you. It just must be the computer. It has to be. It's the only thing that makes sense.
You know what would make sense?
What's that?
If we turn the freaking light on.
We could do that. April Fool's Day. Mark's going to tell us the history of April Fools. Now, here's what's funny. The moment you got up, it immediately got brighter and lighter, if that doesn't say something. That'll work. We're going to talk about it.
It works for now, and then when I sit down, it'll adjust again.
No, it'll be perfect. April Fool's Day. Mark has the history for us. Some trending topics. There's the Cancun airport stories, kind of bonkers. You have a story about a pizza romance disaster. Is that a good way to describe it? Here in the state of Pennsylvania. So we're going to talk about some trending topics. You have an interesting take on the Dr. Oz campaign across the state of Pennsylvania. And you and I actually kind of disagree on this. So we're going to dive into
because you're wrong.
We're going to dive into that a little bit, and then we're going to end with some Final Four stuff. Maybe we'll make some picks. Before we get to all of that, as we start every show off with, Mark, how are you feeling today? Friday.
I mean, I'm mostly good, I think. You know,
Okay.
The world is spinning, and why hi, Jeff?
He says hi, Jeff, to me all the time.
Why just Jeff?
He must agree with me and not you.
Wait till he gets to the Dr. Oz take.
Mark looks like he's in a dark room.
Oh, I thought I just saw Mark looks, and I just assumed it was going to be better in the dark or something like that. I thought there was going to be a joke there.
No, I got you.
So I get it. Or an insulty joke. So what were we talking with? April Fool's. So here's the thing. I'd heard this once.
Okay.
The history of April Fool's, where it started, was back in certain, when they had different calendars. There's the Gregorian calendar, but before the Gregorian calendar came in, there were other calendars. And lots of places, I guess the New Year's ended. There was like a celebration at the end of the year. And it started March 25th, and it went for a week. And then the New Year started on April 1st.
Interesting.
But then there were other places that went away from this, and it was like January 1st is the start of the year in the Gregorian calendar, and it was as it was spreading. Okay. So those people called the people who celebrated the old way. If you thought the New Year started on April 1st, then you were an April Fool. And that's the legend, which makes perfect sense. And it's a really good intellectual story because all that stuff is factually documented.
Okay.
The problem is there's a poet that had a poem about it, like before they made the change, that mentioned April Fools. And there was something, I just read this in England, that there was a reference to April Fools before the calendar got switched.
So now they're not sure.
So they're like, it sounds good in theory, but there's other references that predate this that now kibosh your theory. So the history of it, no one really knows.
That's a good point.
There is the crazy thing is there are two places here. I can look this up. That actually it's a real holiday, a national holiday on April 1st. Now in Cyprus, it's Cypress National Day.
Okay.
So it really has nothing to do with April 1st, or not April Fool's Day. It just happens to be. But the other one is Odessa, Ukraine. So how crazy is that?
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, so they know it's been around a long time, and it's just a day of harmless pranks, but they don't really know why it started and why it's April Fool's. There was also a Shakespearean reference of what they say, March 30 plus 2. And then they're like, okay, 30 plus 2. Well, there's 31 days in March. The 30 plus 2 would be April 1st. And then, so there's lots of speculation, but no one really knows.
I have two thoughts about this. The first one is kind of a hot take. I think social media has almost ruined April Fool's Day. Because it's just too easy to get on and just post something random. You
used to have to work for it?
You used to have to really come up with something good on April 1st. Now people just get on their Twitter, they get on their Facebook, whatever it is, and they just put some random tweet out, and that's their prank for the day. It used to really be like really in-depth pranks.
My buddy in college, so you might not even be old enough to remember it. Do you remember the old phones that sat on the thing and it hung off of each end? He put so now we're back. So if you just looked and there wasn't enough, you pick up and you put it to your ear and you have with shaving cream all over it. So yeah, there were interesting little things like that.
Those are real pranks.
I know with
if I tweeted something right now and it was fake, would you consider that a prank?
No, I figured that's how the world works now.
I just don't consider
it's fake news.
So here's the point I'm making is I feel like 80% of the pranks today aren't pranks. Like it's just people typing things that are incorrect.
We had one, my ex and I, when I assume my son was born, because our two girls slept in the same room in twin beds, and we switched them while they were sleeping, so they woke up in the wrong bed. That's always a fun one with little kids. People that you can pick up. First of all, they're small enough to pick up, but second of all, you can pick them up and they won't wake up. So that was fun.
There was a parent who did the alarm like the wrong way. Like they changed all the clocks so it looked like it was 7:30, but it was really like 4:30.
Ah, okay.
Which that one's kind of harmless, but there is a little kind of cruelty to that one, like waking somebody up at 4:30, like when they don't have to, especially a kid.
This wasn't April Fool's, but I remember when I was in the middle school, a kid fell asleep in class.
Everyone walked out.
And the teacher got everybody to walk. So the kid woke up and then there was nobody in the class.
Just an empty room.
That was fun.
That's a pretty good one. So April Fool's Day, I did not. Have you had any pranks today? Did you set anybody up?
No.
Okay. I have not pranked anybody.
But the day is still young.
It is still young. It's early yet. Could happen.
You're right, because we're so reminded of it now because of social media.
Typing something, and then they send it out. It's just too simple. And it's just, and this is the other part too. This has been like a decade now of people just using a tweet as an April prank. And it's just not.
It is. You're right. You're right. It's a poor man's April Fool's Day. You really got to come up with something better.
Yes, I agree with that. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you, and I don't think
we should start this before we change that. We should start like an old classic society of April Fool's jokes that have nothing to do with social media.
That would be good.
It has to be old school.
I like that. The OGs of April Fool's.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
We should do that starting next year.
Okay. Starting next year. There was also, for people who enjoyed the show Parks and Rec. Have you ever seen Parks and Rec?
Never watched Parks and Rec.
For people who enjoy the show Parks and Rec, you'll get a kick out of this because I'm so bad at the calendar. Like I told you before, I don't know which months end with 30 or 31. Like I just don't.
There's a rhyme.
There is a rhyme. I just don't know it. March 31st is the day where the main character in the show, his secretary, puts all the meetings on March 31st because she thought March 31st didn't exist. So she would just tell people like, hey, just so you know, like March 31st sounds good. What time? So in the show, then he has to have like 90 meetings on March 31st because they didn't know that it existed. And then there's, I think that somehow at the end of the episode, they play into the April 1st, like Fool's Day prank or something like that. So it all like ties together.
What's crazy too is I never watched The Office.
Okay.
And two of my kids have watched every episode on Hulu or wherever it is. I don't know if it was an April Fool's prank, but when they put the dude's stapler in Jello, it's just brilliant.
Really good one.
That is brilliant.
I mean, you could find a lot of pranks just from watching The Office because he would just prank Dwight. Jim would prank Dwight every episode almost.
I mean, it's
really good.
I can't believe, like that's one of the ones you see and you're like, why didn't I think of that?
There is, because I don't want to go down like the Office route. It's my favorite show. I think I've told you that before.
Probably.
It's my all-time favorite show. There is a great one where Dwight and Jim are trying to scheme something up, and they're trying to prank somebody else. And Jim goes, what if we set it up so that they can't open their drawers? They can only crack it open, but not open enough so they can actually fit their hand in. And Dwight's like, oh, how like awful. Like you can't get into your drawer. So then like 3 minutes later, Dwight tries to get into his drawer and it's locked. And he's like sitting there trying to get his hand in. And Jim's just like, pretty good prank. Like should have listened to me. Like it was a pretty good one. So also some trending topics today. I had mentioned before we get to the pizza shop one, there's a viral video going around of a Cancun airport. And essentially what happened was a bunch of signs fell down. And when the signs fell down, it sounded like, and essentially it sounded like gunshots. And so the alarm went off. And there is videos going around of hundreds of people trying to flood out of the Cancun airport because they believed it was under attack. And there's videos of people like hiding down behind the luggage carriers and like crying and like trying to wait. Now, eventually security came out and said, you know, it was signage, the alarm shouldn't have went off, all these things. But you want to talk about, like, you always wonder what it would look like what would happen if there was a shooting in an airport, or what it would, I mean, it is pandemonium in this airport when those signs fell down. Really scary stuff.
And this is me being a wimpy, you know, American Pennsylvanian. With all the I mean, you Google Mexico, they just talked about 6 severed heads were found. And it's, what number did I, in the last 15 years, have been 340,000 people killed.
I can't remember
related
the exact
to
number
the drug
you gave,
cartel.
but it was hundreds of thousands of people.
I don't understand why people go to Mexico.
It's just, I'll tell you.
Like, if you could vacation anywhere in the world, I would
think
be
it's just
petrified.
close. I think it's just close.
You know what else is close?
What's
you know what's close? Florida.
Yeah, but you got to get out of the country every once in a while, don't
Do
you? Well, maybe not to Mexico, but somewhere, right?
Jamaica?
I don't know.
The Bahamas?
Have you been to Mexico?
Never.
I've never been to Mexico. I've been to a lot of the islands. Like, I've been to a lot of the Caribbean, but I've never been to Mexico. Like, I've never gone that far southwest. I usually just go south.
And I heard people say, oh, when you're on the, I've heard Mexico City's actually great.
Yeah.
I've heard, you know, they say when you're on the resorts, you know, they don't mess with the resorts because it's so much money for the country and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But I don't know. It's a scary place.
Yeah. And then you have a pizza story that is kind of bonkers as well.
Yeah, apparently in Pennsylvania, Bucks County. I didn't see the town, but Bucks County is right outside of Philly, right?
Yeah.
It said partner. So I think business partner / romantic partner. One of them killed the other one, wrapped them in a tarp. She killed he, wrapped him in a tarp, left him in the master bedroom for 2 weeks. The police showed up because the kid, the dude's kid, was like, I can't get in touch with my dad.
Okay.
Just wrapped him in a tarp, left him in the bedroom.
Absolutely bonkers. And they were co-owners of a pizza shop.
Co-owners.
Right? Do I have that right?
Apparently they were like lovers.
Okay.
Apparently.
So
who knows?
she's been arrested now?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes. I think there's a law against shooting someone, wrapping him in a tarp, and leaving him in the bedroom.
Well, so
she claims self-defense.
I mean, someone has to hear about it first. That's, I mean, the 2 weeks beforehand. But it is one of the, I mean, you talk about like how often you run into people or how often you bump into people, and then how long it takes people to recognize, like, you know who I haven't seen in a while, or you know who I haven't heard from, or
right.
Like sometimes it, you know, it takes a second.
Well, I know this kind of, it goes even further because 99.9% of us can't imagine actually shooting someone just because you're.
No.
But like knowing that the dead person is wrapped in a tarp and right over there, like while the person is.
You're saying like the person's day to day and just knowing.
Just like I'm existing, like I shoot you, wrap you in a tarp, and put you in the hallway, and I just keep doing my thing, and there's dead Jeff over there did she sleep in the bedroom while the dead body was there wrapped in a tarp? Did she like the bizarreness,
the mental hurdles to just continue on for the next 2 weeks is bizarre.
Yes,
for sure. I agree with that. You also had the main thing that you wanted. I think this is the main thing you want to talk about. And this is an interesting topic.
This is even stupid, but I think it's interesting.
Dr. Oz is running for office in Pennsylvania. You know more of the details than I do. I remember Dr. Oz when he first came on. I can't believe I'm blanking on this. When he first came, he did a couple of episodes on Oprah, I believe.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, I think at the very tail end.
Sure wasn't Dr. Phil?
It was Dr. Phil as well, but I believe she also had Dr. Oz on at the end of it. So I do
Oprah
know,
was like Happy Days. She created all these spin-off shows.
It's
like Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, Joni Loves Chachi.
It's insane. You know, in like, not to completely tangent, but like feeling old, I have kids and players that don't know really who Oprah is, or don't understand that like every day at 4 o'clock, the world just kind of froze for an hour.
The cultural phenomenon that Oprah was.
Like kitchens, like households froze from 4 to 5 o'clock as dinners were being made, and the TV. I am dead convinced that the TV kitchen is mostly because of Oprah.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
I'm dead convinced of it. That the reason TVs were made, like the reason that companies continued to produce like 12-inch, 15-inch like televisions was so that they could fit in the kitchen between the hours of 4 and 5. I'm dead convinced of that.
You might be
and
right.
I think Oprah had a ton to do with that, like in that run, late 90s, 2000s, like for sure. I truly believe.
You know what I thought, and I've said this to people, the reason that her show took off, and then we will get back to Dr. Oz, whether he was a spinoff of Oprah or not.
I'm going to look it up. Go ahead. Keep talking.
The reason that Oprah, because before then there was Phil Donahue was kind of like the big one when I was really little and stuff like that. They would all talk to the audience, and they would have their guest on, and then they would do this. It was kind of like the first, radio talk show. They would pass the microphone around, and these people would stand up. And after a while, you realize, I think Oprah was the first one that realized that most of the people in the audience are idiots.
Okay.
And if I want to have intelligent discussion, it's better for me to book guests who I know are intelligent than passing the mic around to Martha, who knows what she has to say.
Sure.
And that's why when we did, when I did Sports Talk in Baltimore and I was on for 2 hours a day, every day, we took calls because you needed to.
Sure.
But when I was here doing, an hour a week with whoever I was doing it with, I was like, we're not taking calls. They used to encourage you. And it's like, no, we can talk for an hour and we can have intelligent discussion for an hour without taking a call from some drunk guy who, who worked, whatever, and then just got home and drank a box of beer. And now he thinks it's going to be cool to call into a radio show.
Right.
So I think her taking the microphone out of the audience, she was the first one, and it's one of the things that launched her.
No, that's a good call. So Dr. Oz is running for Senate, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Let me look that up. But yes, he's running for, I don't think he's running for Pennsylvania Senate. I think he's running for like the Senate.
Okay. And what do you got going on?
Dr. Oz running for Senate. So here's what, up until a week ago, all I knew was Dr. Oz.
Okay.
Like, I didn't even know if his real last name was Oz or if it was shortened, but it is. It's just OZ. But he was just Dr. Oz.
Okay.
So it's just like Dr. Phil. Do you know what Dr. Phil's last name is?
No, I don't.
McGraw.
Okay.
But to the world, he's Dr. Phil. And that's just, so he was Dr. Oz. Well, now, so say Dr. Phil was running for office and he just said, Dr. Phil for Senate. The other side would not pound on the fact that his last name is McGraw.
Okay.
Because it doesn't hurt unless you didn't like Quick Draw McGraw. Do you know him?
He's the cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Hanna-Barbera?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dr. Oz's first name is Mehmet.
Okay.
Mehmet.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, now you see this, his rivals, the people running against him, now are just keep calling him Mehmet Oz. They might call him Dr. Mehmet Oz because I think he is a real doctor. But they're just they keep referring to him as Mehmet.
Okay.
Because, this is my 100% opinion, it looks so foreign. They're trying to scare people into voting against him because we don't want to vote for a foreigner. Even though he's not a foreigner, he just has a bizarre first name.
Okay.
That's my whole fear factor. You can't vote for a guy named Mehmet because how can an American be named Mehmet?
Okay. So this is because I agree with you in the sense that I do think this is the majority of the reason that a competitor would do it. So like that part, I agree with you. I think it would be very naive for someone to not think that's what's happening, and especially in the world we live in today. However, I'm failing to see how there's anything wrong with that from the competing campaign.
It's good, clean strategy.
100%.
It's sad.
It's not a nickname.
Nope.
It's
I'm
not.
with you.
They're not calling him. I can't use I made up a nickname before, and I can't use that anymore. Before the show, I said, listen, it's not like they're calling him Blank Oz. Like,
right.
It's his.
Wait, well, I don't remember. What was it? What was the blank?
I don't remember.
Before the show, tell me.
But it's his real name. They're not doctoring it. They're not giving him a cheesy nickname. It's not detrimental in any way from the campaign's standpoint. So the funny part is your beef, or the point that I think you're trying to make, is with Pennsylvania voters. Because if you're a Pennsylvania voter, and whether they call him Dr. Oz or Dr. Mehmet Oz, I guess what I'm saying is anything that you would be upset about, I feel like you almost have to point it at the voter. You can't point it at the campaign. In my opinion, the campaign is not doing anything wrong.
They're not doing anything wrong. It's just a sad reality of life that, like, if you should vote for, and don't get me wrong, I'm not voting for Dr. Oz.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't even, and this is the thing, he doesn't live in Pennsylvania. I don't know if he lives in Pennsylvania. I don't know if he's ever been through Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how these rules work, but when I just Googled it, it said New Jersey. And so anyway, be that as it may.
Sounds like the PIAA should get involved.
Because maybe he might.
Sounds like he's a top 5 high school athlete.
He might be a state champ in Pennsylvania while living in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So it's just, if the guy is the best candidate, if you think he's the best candidate, if you were going to vote for him, or you were considering voting for him, and now you've changed your tune because he sounds like a foreigner, then that is sad. However, there are lots of people who are going to do exactly that, and it's just sad that the tactic works.
Yeah, I think so. In a weird way, I mean, in a bizarre way, he is a state foreigner if he's living in New Jersey. Like, he is. I mean, what's the definition of foreigner? Does foreigner have to be international?
I think so. It's a good question. He's certainly a carpetbagger. There's no doubt about it. Just like Hillary Clinton was when all of a sudden, Hillary Clinton's a senator of New York. I thought they were from Arkansas. And you're like, well, they are from Arkansas, but there was an open seat, so they bought a house in New York. And so
there are ways to combat it, though. Like, if his team is good, if he really cares about winning, and his team is worth what they're being paid, they will find a way to make it. We've had dudes win elections, their names are Dick. There are ways to win elections regardless of what your first name. We had a president named Obama. Like, there are ways to win elections, even if your name doesn't necessarily work for you in an American election. There are ways to pull this off. There's ways to combat it.
Yes. I don't disagree with any of that. And I don't even know if I haven't looked at any polls. Maybe he's going to win. I'd be surprised if he wins. But maybe he's going to win. But all I'm saying is, because the first time I saw it, my reaction was, I didn't even know what his name was. Wow, that's a weird name.
Right.
And then when I saw it again, and I saw it again, and I was like, now I know why they're doing it. Because they want to make sure everyone knows you're voting for a guy named Mehmet.
Sure.
Do you really think he's an American? Like, forget about the fact that he's not from Pennsylvania.
Well,
do you really think he's American?
Can we flip it real quick? Because I think there's an interesting play here of, how do I want to word this? Is there a negative aspect to being known as Dr. Oz as opposed to being known as, like, the average citizen Mehmet Oz? Like, do you think there's such a positive aspect to being Dr. Oz and being branded that way, like marketed? Because here's the thing: if you and I went through most campaigns right now, almost nobody's Dr. Blank. Like, most people run on their first name and their last name. Very few people run on Mr. Blank, Dr. Blank.
Well, I think
such and
that's because
such
most
blank.
people who are smart enough to be a doctor are smart enough to stay out of politics.
That's possible. But but here's the funny part though. Most of them probably have doctorates. I bet you there's a lot of politicians who run who have doctorates.
You think?
I do. Like when
I
Ben
don't.
Carson ran, he was not Dr. Carson.
Oh, you don't think so?
He ran as Ben Carson.
Oh, but I knew he was doctor. Like
Yeah,
he was Dr. Ben
yes,
Carson.
you knew he was a doctor, but he didn't run as Dr. Carson. Like on his campaign stuff, it did not say Dr. Carson.
No, and I
was
get
a
it.
significant
But it's
name
his.
on his campaign.
But this is his stage name. Just like Dr. Phil's name, that's his stage name. So no, I do get it. I get your point. It would be interesting to see if on an official ballot, if it said Dr. Ben Carson, because his name, like that's a real.
I mean, that's a good point too. Like when you go to the ballot, is it allowed to say Dr. Oz?
I don't know.
It probably isn't. It probably has to say Dr. Mehmet Oz.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I'm sure it has.
So I mean, it's like so. Here's the point I'm making: is aren't you just better off using your first name, like regardless of your first name? Aren't you just better off doing it?
I don't think if you think it's going to scare people.
But so they're just going to show up to the ballot scared regardless. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, at some point, wouldn't you want to get out ahead of it? If you really feel it's detrimental.
What if his first name was Adolf? Do you want to get out ahead of it, or do you want to hide behind it?
I would want to get out ahead of it. I think the point I'm making to you is regardless of what my first or last name is or how it would play out for me, I feel like you have to get ahead of it. I feel like it's fool's gold to not get out ahead of it. It is going to eventually bite you if you don't.
I do see your point. I'm not saying you're wrong. The other side would be within any election, you need to maintain momentum and stability to keep money coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And if the longer he can ride the momentum wave, the more other candidates either drop off or run out of money, and maybe he wants to avoid it as much as possible as we run into like primary season. Maybe if it was for a real election and he was on the ticket and it was him versus a Democrat and they're going for, then maybe he gets out in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he does. I don't know. Those are the two schools of thought.
Right.
Like, we don't want to rock the boat. We have good momentum. We have money coming in. So let's not say anything. Or we're going to have to jump this hurdle sooner or later. So let's just jump it now. It's a good point.
You don't know Ben Carson, obviously, so this is all hypothetical. But like, do you think the reason he didn't necessarily push as Dr. Carson specifically is because his first name was Ben? Like, you
mean because it's just common? It seems normal.
If his first name sounded foreign, or if his first name was more of a cultural first name, do you think he would have tried to continue running as Dr. Carson from the beginning on? Or do you think the reason that I'm able to use him as an example is because his name is Ben? That's
a good question. So you mean when you say cultural, you mean like if his name was Jamal?
Sure.
It's a good question. I don't know. And I'm sure every one of these campaigns has these think tanks that go into all this stuff. But Ben makes him sound like a regular guy, but Doctor makes him sound smart. So it is, yes.
We were thinking about this the other day too. Like, if your name is Karen,
I just said this the other day.
We were just having this conversation. If your name's Karen, like Chad's a big one right now. Like, to be a Chad is a thing. I'm trying to think of some of the other meme
Jake
names.
from State Farm.
Jake, like some of these. But see, like Jake might not be bad. You know what I'm saying? Like Jake, the connotation of Jake, I don't think necessarily has shifted just because of Jake from State Farm.
No,
but there are names that like the connotation of.
Felicia?
Yes. Like, do you think there's some people that want to run or that are running, and that is like a serious problem for them, are like these meme branded names that have such a negative connotation?
I don't know, but we were joking about that because this kid in the town, and his mom's name is Karen, and the immediate joke is she's such a Karen.
Right.
And then you're like, she was probably 40. She lived for 40 some years,
Right.
and it was no big deal to be Karen.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're like, why me?
Yeah. I mean, if you showed up to a ballot and there were 4 names and one of them was Karen, I bet you there are people that they would see the name Karen, chuckle, and then vote for somebody else. I would all but guarantee it.
It is
all off of a meme brand.
Well, have you ever heard this story? And this is way tangented. There was a hair metal band in the 80s called Winger.
Okay.
Which you probably don't know, but they had a couple of gems.
Okay.
They had a couple gems. And but the lead singer was a really like he was in a lot of middle school girls' lockers. He was like John Bon Jovi. He was a pretty boy.
Okay.
And and I saw an interview with him talking about this when they knew that their band was in trouble on Beavis and Butthead. Did you ever watch Beavis and Butthead?
I've seen episodes. Yeah.
I was not a watcher either, but I've seen it. But their 2 T-shirts, one was AC/DC and one was Metallica.
Okay.
And they were the nerdy kid at school one day showed up with a T-shirt that said Winger.
Okay.
And he said, right when we saw it, we were like, we're doomed.
Okay.
Because we are now, because as much as like Beavis and Butthead, it was a cultural phenomenon for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
And so now we are associated, we are with the nerdy kid who, this is rock and roll nerdville.
Right.
And I remember him saying, like, why did you pick Winger? Why didn't you pick Poison? Why didn't you pick, there were other bands you could have picked.
Yeah.
Why did you pick Winger? But right when they saw it, they knew, like, that's going to hurt.
Like,
and it hurt a lot.
Yeah. That is incredible. I've never heard that story
before. And then grunge came on and hurt it more
yeah.
And all because some cartoonists, the guys drawing the show, like, oh, let's pick one. We could go with Air Supply. We could go with Chicago. We could go, but we want something better. Let's go with Winger.
Yeah. And that really, really
and
hurts.
They said when we saw it, we knew we were doomed.
Oh, that is
so they were kind of the Karen of the story
of rock and roll. They were the Karen of rock and roll after the Beatles.
I'm telling you, episode. You don't like good music, so you wouldn't know. They got probably like 4 gems that are just like, go see them live, listen to 4 songs, and you will be happy.
Just turn around and leave.
They are gems.
I believe it.
I can sing some of them to you if you want me.
I'm good. Final four to end the show. Carolina. First of all, this is the weekend. Every college basketball fan deserves this weekend. Carolina Duke in the Final Four is I was trying to think of a sports comparison to Duke and Carolina finally meeting in the Final Four. I honestly could not think of one. Can you think of something more when you throw in the rivalry, the weight, the fact that it's never happened, right? And then you just add in the weight of it being Coach K's last. I could not think of a
this is the 100th time he's ever coached against North Carolina.
Yes. It's really, really incredible.
The only I think some of the great ones are Michigan, Ohio State, and Final Four football.
So if they ever met in like the
national in the BCS,
the BCS, okay.
Auburn, Alabama would be up there.
See that one real quick because I think that's a good point. The Michigan, Ohio State one, but there is no tournament.
Well, but they could both make the BCS.
Now they could. But you don't have this stretch of like all these years they could have met in this BCS Final Four, and now it's finally happening.
No, that's a valid point.
I guess you could look at it as the national championship. Like all these years they could have met in the national championship, but they never did. But correct me if I'm wrong, they kind of did that every year because football's different. Because they play each other every year.
Yes.
You're just not going to see each other in the national championship. It's very unlikely.
See, now I would take it one step further and say what makes this game so great is while it's going on the TV right next to it will be the first night of WrestleMania because WrestleMania is this weekend as well.
What was the other sporting event you were going to say?
WrestleMania.
No, before.
Auburn and Alabama.
Okay, if they were to ever meet in like the college football championship.
In the college football championship, yes.
Okay.
There is the thing about North Carolina and Duke, which people don't realize, is they are literally 8 miles apart geographically.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as close as some of these like Muncie to Hughesville who are rivals, but they're 2 miles. But it's 8 miles.
Yep.
And so it's, the story, like these guys go out on the town and they intermingle. They're at the same bars and they're hitting on the same girls and they're at the same parties and things. So it is a local rivalry that is of national renown.
Oh, yeah.
And so that makes it neat too. I mean, I can only imagine what that area is like during Saturday night at 9:00.
It's going to be absolutely insane. I bet you it's insane right now. Like, I bet you the campuses are absolutely rocking right now. There is a buzz everywhere you go. There has to be.
And the hangover for the team who loses is just
It'll be rough.
To these people. Tomorrow night is the national championship.
I would agree with
what
that.
happens Monday is window dressing.
I will say, I do think Duke would take a loss significantly harder than North Carolina will. Because I think, like, North Carolina being an 8 seed, they're not really, I mean, they're a blue blood and they're good and they're playing well, but they're not really supposed to be here. Like, not
first year coach, 8 seed. You're right. I'm with you.
And then you throw in the fact that, like, Carolina loses. We still have Hubert Davis back next year. Like the world's not necessarily, if Duke loses tomorrow, I'm not saying the world falls apart, but the world is shifting. Like, it is the end of an era, and they'll be just fine. Like, Duke's going to be top 5 again next year. Like, I'm not saying it's the end. However, what people view as Duke basketball ends if they lose on Saturday night, and it ends because of what their rival did to them. So I think Duke has way more to lose than North Carolina.
Agreed. So now here's the question, and this is where the Sunday morning quarterbacks are going to show up. Because usually it's Monday, but this will be Sunday.
Sure.
And whatever happens, people are going to say, well, it's obvious. Like, if Duke wins, they're going to say, well, you knew. There's no way Duke could lose now. They're just riding the momentum of Coach K, and there's no way they could lose. And if they do lose, they're going to say, well, the pressure, it just got to them, and they were out of sync, and they were trying to do too much. So no one will make these claims now. They'll wait and see what happens and then say, well, yeah, it was obvious. Everyone knew that was going to happen. Do you have a gut as to what's going to happen? Is Duke going to play great, or are they going to play terrible?
So this is my gut, because I've said to you before, I think Duke's playing the best out of the last 4 teams. Like, I think
they're hot.
I think they score the easiest in isolation. They know what they're trying to do when the moment gets, like, they actually don't look panicked at all when the chips are down. However, the best thing that happened to them was losing to Carolina at Duke, because now they know, like, all that nervousness, like, what do we do? They have sort of figured it out since then. I think the reason they look the way they look is because that whole pressure and what do you do, that already happened the night of Coach K's last game.
You don't think think they play well?
I think they're going to play incredibly well. As a Carolina fan, I'm a little devastated that we already beat them in the moment. Beating them at Duke on Coach K's last home game was like the greatest thing ever. But I didn't think we were going to play them in the Final Four.
Right.
Now, in hindsight, I'm kind of like, we kind of jumped them early. Like, we could have jumped them this game if we would have lost at Duke, because it would have been like, oh, like, nah. I feel like all of that is out the window. I think Duke is going to win.
Okay, let me explain to you how English language works.
Go ahead.
You can't be a little devastated.
What do you mean?
You said, I'm a little devastated.
I'm a little devastated.
You can't be a little devastated.
You can be a little devastated.
Devastation cannot be little.
You don't think so?
No.
Like, okay, so think, yes, it can be.
Devastation is mammoth.
Okay, is there devastation in Ukraine right now?
Yes.
Okay, but the world is massive. So in the world, there's a little devastation. Do you see where I'm going?
No.
That made perfect sense.
Well, on a mathematical.
There's lots of places in the world where nothing's devastated. However, there's a couple of places where things are devastating. So there's a little devastation in the world.
That's like saying it's slightly huge.
Yes.
It can't be
things
slightly
can be
huge.
Slightly huge.
No, they can't.
It's all about It's all about context.
Correct.
Yes.
It's about definition.
So in this context, I'm a little devastated.
You can't be a little
Listen,
devastated.
we're in the Final Four. The world is, if you're a Carolina basketball fan right now, the world is great. Do you understand what I'm
I get
saying?
it.
You're in the Final Four. You're getting to play Duke. You have a chance to ruin Coach K's final game. Like, the world is great. However, I am a little devastated that we already beat them because I feel like we kind of wasted the umph on that game. But again, we didn't think we were going to play them in the Final Four, so it is.
You can be a little concerned. You can be a little disappointed.
I'm a little devastated.
You can be a little on edge. You can't be a little devastated.
I'm a little devastated.
You can't be a little devastated.
Here's my other take on
I
the
guess
other
it's
game.
like being a little pregnant. You can't be a little pregnant.
You can be a little pregnant.
No, you can't.
You can't be a little pregnant?
No, you're either pregnant
It's
or
a
you're not.
9-month process. If you're
You
9
can't.
days into it, you're not a little pregnant?
You're pregnant. That's all
If
you
you're
are.
9 days into
You're
a
not-
9-month pregnancy,
there
you're
aren't
a little
levels of
pregnant.
there aren't levels of pregnancy. You're either pregnant or you're not.
I completely disagree with that. On the other side of the bracket, Villanova, Kansas. Here is my this is my Kansas take. And it's not even
First
a
of
great
all,
one.
is anyone going to watch?
The Kansas Nova game?
Yes.
I think because it's the Final Four, yes. I think and especially people love Villanova. They do. There's a lot of people who really
I get all
love
that.
Villanova basketball.
Knowing what's like, this is what I think. Other than all the people who are smart enough to be watching WrestleMania at the same time. If you turn off the Carolina Duke to watch WrestleMania, I'm with you. And should we do a WrestleMania preview after this? Because it's Coach K's last game, because it's Carolina Duke, because it's in the Final Four, this is becoming the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And people are going to watch this that don't even care about basketball.
This is going to get higher ratings than the national championship.
Absolutely.
100%.
So the game before it there's going to be a lot of these people that are like, oh, what time's the Carolina Duke game?
Mm-hmm.
And don't even know. It'll be midway through the second half. They don't even know who's playing. There's another game on. I don't care who's the Carolina Duke.
I don't disagree with that.
It's going to be nuts.
So adding on to that, my only take on the Kansas-Villanova game is if Kansas wins, like let's say Kansas beats Villanova, and let's say Kansas goes to national championship, and let's say Kansas beats Duke or Carolina. I would argue in the history of college basketball, there has never been a quieter 1 seed to win the national championship.
I agree.
Kansas being a 1 seed and really like, for the most part, like they haven't dominated their side of the bracket, but they really haven't ever been. I know they were losing at halftime but they haven't been in a close game. Like there was never really a moment late in these games where you didn't think Kansas was going to move on. Most teams of their stature, everyone's talking about them. You're talking about, how do you beat them? What do you do? Here's their 3 best players. I can't believe this kid's this good. Look what he's doing. It is like Kansas doesn't exist, and they are probably, it's fair to say they might be the favorite to be the national champion.
Well, I think they have the easier round, especially with the Villanova kid getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but like Gonzaga's still a much bigger story because all year they're Gonzaga. So you get into the tournament, you've got Gonzaga. And then obviously when St. Peter's gets on a roll, that they were all the rage.
But think about you're older, you're going to be able to remember this better than I will, because through the 90s I was a kid and I'm not reading the paper and I'm not, I'm watching the games, right. But the media, the focus on it, I cannot in my lifetime, I cannot think of a quieter team to just kind of rampage through the bracket, and they're this close to being a national champion. And you and I joked, I can't name a kid for them. Can you name a Kansas basketball player? I cannot name a Kansas basketball player. And I am sort of a basketball junkie.
I can't, no.
And so that's kind of the point I'm making is this is never, in a weird way, as much as Duke Carolina is unprecedented, it's never happened before. And Kansas being a 1 seed that just no one talks about and no one's really caring about, it's unprecedented. This has never happened before where you've had a team this good, be a 1 seed, this close to a national title, and no one cares. Nobody.
I'm with you.
It's really bizarre. Really, really weird.
No, I of all the intriguing stories and the things that, Juwan Howard was a story throughout the year because of, and obviously, like we said, Gonzaga and then St. Peter's. And I think Miami kind of made it fun there for a little bit because they were an 11 seed. And,
sure.
Coach K's run. Yes, they're just boring. They're a boring team from the Midwest who just kicks everybody's ass.
Yeah.
And there's nothing exciting about it. I
know. But it's not a Kansas thing either, though, because Kansas in the past has been like really exciting, like really fun to watch. Like,
oh, they're not.
They've always
they're not boring.
They've always had names and like dudes you wanted to. I mean, the one year they had like Wiggins and Embiid just a little bit ago, and like they just the Morris brothers for a while, and then you had the Heinrich and Collison group, and like every time they get to a Final Four, like dudes, it's like these are the players, and this is why they're good, and this is why they're exciting. It is like it's just a blimp on the radar of college basketball, and they're probably going to win a national title, and no one knows who they are.
Can we talk about Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah,
they're wrestling.
Okay, is that exciting? I did see this weird thing about Brock Lesnar, and like that hit. The argument made was that he might be the most underrated athlete in the history of athletes. Like when you look at like people and what they accomplished and how great of an athlete they were, but nobody talks about them or ranks them or like where they should be. Brock Lesnar was the one that was brought up.
He's interesting. He's done what's hurt his MMA career is he kept testing positive for steroids, which is frowned upon.
Yes.
But yeah, he's a monster.
Yeah.
He is. And I don't know where he was an NCAA wrestler, and I don't think he won a national title, but
I'm not
I
sure
think he
if
was
he
an
ended up
All-American.
winning it or not. He was very, very good.
I think the dude, the heavyweight from Minnesota who just won again, I think he already has a gig with the WWE.
I believe it.
I think he was looking at MMA.
Okay.
And then he was like, you know what? I'll just go WWE.
Yeah.
And he'll make his cash.
Pretty sweet.
So, yeah. So there you go. 2 TVs, Saturday night, my house, in the basement. We will have basketball on one, and WrestleMania on the other. And WrestleMania's really done a good thing by splitting it up over 2 days. It's Saturday and Sunday. It's like a weekend festival. It's like Woodstock.
Yeah, it's like a performance. Awesome. Anything else before we go? About to end it.
Did we tell the Peacock story from last week? Have we told that?
Yeah.
About
how it started?
No, about our website and the jump in.
Oh no, go ahead.
Have you heard this story?
I don't. I know we had a story go viral
last Friday. Yes, our story that went viral on here was last Friday. That they were just happened to be coincidental. It's Friday, whatever, and someone was looking through. It's like national. Like one of the days recently was National Cheesesteak Day because I said I didn't know it until we missed it, and we could have had some fun with it.
Yeah.
And they were looking through, and last Friday was National Peacock Day.
Okay.
Which why are there any native peacocks in North America? I don't even know why, but it was National Peacock Day.
Okay.
And what's crazy is Carrie, who is our news director, who's not a basketball fan, says, "Well, don't the Peacocks play today?" And Aaron, who's right, he's like, "Yeah, they do. They play tonight."
Yeah.
It's like, well, that has to be in our story. That how can the Peacocks lose on National Peacock Day?
Sure.
So apparently, if you Googled it, I didn't Google it, but this is what Jerry said, that we ran it with the Peacocks were playing on National Peacock Day, and they won. Who did they beat in the Elite Eight? They won by 3.
Purdue, I believe.
Purdue, yes, they beat Purdue.
Yeah.
So they won to go to the Elite Eight, the first 15 seed that ever won in this round in the history.
Yeah.
But the Peacocks won on National Peacock Day. But he said when you Googled it, we were the only publication in America that associated those two things. That St. Peter's was playing on National Peacock Day in the tournament, and they won. And so that's why it went up that we were the only one. So there you go. So that was our claim to fame of the NCAA tournament.
Good stuff.
Your claim to fame is that you think Duke is going to. So when you show up here Monday, if Carolina wins, you can't take any credit. You can.
Oh no,
because you think they're losing,
and I won't take any credit to it. I said to you the simplest way to put this is I think Carolina's playing well, but a lot of it is like fluky. We're hitting deep threes, we're a lot of things are going our way. Duke is playing well in the sense of when we need to score, you can't stop us. We're getting to our spots, we're getting good looks. So
I get that, but don't you take? It's hard to stay hot for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people call timeouts to break momentum. Mm-hmm. It's a minute. Mm-hmm. They've had 6 days. Mm-hmm. This is broken momentum. So if they go out to assume that either of these teams is going to come out shooting it well because they shot it well last weekend,
right?
We could be 5 minutes into the game and it could be 4-3.
Yeah. Listen,
or it could be 16-15.
Listen, in every aspect of my life that doesn't involve my safe and health, like my safety and health, I'm rooting for North Carolina. If I had to bet my house on it or a gun to my head, I'm probably betting on Duke just as like I just think Duke is individually, their isolation, the way they can score, I think they're better, and I think it just suits it better for the Final Four. I'm worried about Carolina relying on like Davis and Love hitting 35-footers when the clock's going down.
Davis
like
Love, he's a golfer.
What's that? Yeah.
You said Davis and
No,
Love.
that was good. Davis and Love.
You mean Hubert?
I wish Hubert Davis was out there. We could use Hubert Davis.
I thought you were taking a shot at the coach. It's like all he's done is win.
Could use.
Were you one of the guys calling for his head 2 months ago?
No.
Yes, you were. I'm sure you were.
I
Every
really
Carolina fan wanted his head on us.
Oh no. To me, Hubert Davis is very similar to James Franklin in the sense of I think people who want to get rid of Franklin don't understand like the other aspects outside of winning and losing. And I feel the same way about Hubert Davis. Like Hubert Davis, the way he talks about the university, the way he talks about the kids, his ability to speak in public, his ability to give speeches and motivate. I think there's so much more.
He represents you very well.
Unbelievably well. So I'm the same people who are like, get rid of Franklin stuff. And I'm like, listen, like, I get it. But like Franklin, here are all the other things that Franklin does that you're not, you're just looking at the scoreboard and you're not looking out at.
We've talked about this.
Yes.
You can, with a guy like Franklin and even, with Davis, it would be a lot easier to do way worse with your next hire than it would be to do better.
Worse. Yeah.
And I'm not saying you could do better in both cases because there's always somebody better out there.
Sure.
But there's a lot more people that are worse than people that are better.
Absolutely. So as a Carolina fan, I go to bed sleeping very well knowing Hubert Davis is our coach. I don't lose a ton of sleep about it.
Well, I will be thinking about you with one eye, while the other eye is watching WrestleMania.
Enjoy your performance. Thank you for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. Enjoy your weekend.
We will see.